Adding accounts to your chart of accounts in QuickBooks Online is a pretty straightforward process, but it's worth walking through it in a little bit of detail so that you can really see how it ends up impacting your reports at the end of the day. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, what I would want to do is I would want to go to my chart of accounts. As I've said, I tend to like having the chart of accounts bookmarked here because I find myself navigating to that page quite a lot. But if it's not something that you routinely go to and therefore don't have it under your bookmarks, you can click on Accounting, and then Chart of Accounts is under that accounting menu. So I can just click there and then I will be on my chart of accounts. So the process of adding an account to your chart of accounts is really very straightforward. You can just go up to the New Account button in the upper right-hand corner here, okay? Now, you can see there is a little caret next to New Account, and that is the Import feature. Now, you can absolutely import accounts into your chart of accounts, but I'm going to say word of caution on that. You need to have an Excel sheet that is formatted just so in order to import it correctly. And on top of that, you might not want to do it if you already have accounts in your chart of accounts because you don't want to duplicate things, right? So while it is a really phenomenal tool if you are just getting started in your file, it might be less useful if you have an already established file that you are working in, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and dive into how to create a new account. Now, let's say, for example, that I am planning to take out a loan from the SBA, okay? That is an account that I might want to create to put onto my chart of accounts in anticipation of getting that loan so that I can classify it correctly, okay? So what I would do is I would go up to New Account here and I would select New Account. And then for the name, I'm going to put SBA Loan. Now, under account type, we want to go ahead and look at the details here so that we are picking the right option. So for this particular item, a loan would be a liability, okay? And we could select either other current liability or long-term liability. Now, current liabilities tend to be anything that's going to be due within a year per general accounting rules, okay? And long-term liabilities are anything that are going to be due a year or more in the future, okay? So for example, if you took out a car loan and the term was 5 years, that would be considered a long-term liability because you're going to make the final payment on that loan more than a year from the time you take it out. Okay, same with this SBA loan. I know people who have SBA loans that are on 20-year terms. Okay, that would by very definition be considered a long-term liability. So I'm going to go ahead and put long-term liability here. And then here you can see there are several other options under detail type. Now, notes payable is going to be the correct one here. But if this were something where you were loaning your business money, you might want to put detail type as shareholder notes payable, right? That way there is a differentiation between notes payable to others and notes payable to you as the owner. So that is it for the sake of creating an account. Okay, now what I do recommend if you are getting a loan or if you are purchasing a car or anything else, I don't tend to like to put the unpaid balance in here, okay? Usually I like to record the deposit or that payment or whatever it happens to be when it leaves the checking account so that I don't end up putting a balance in opening balance equity, okay? So let's say that the SBA was going to transfer me $50,000 for this SBA loan that I am applying for. When that deposit comes into my checking account, I'm going to classify it to this SBA loan account in my bank feed, and that is going to automatically make the balance on this loan correct. Okay. If you have any questions about this, please do leave those in the comments. I will be happy to help because I know this process, especially when you're receiving a loan, can be a little bit complicated. So what I would do at this point is if I was all set on this, if this was all the information that I wanted to put in, I could put the number in the description here if I wanted to, but this is the only information necessary in order to save a new account on your chart of accounts. So I can go ahead and just click Save right here. Now, that account will now be available and viewable in my chart of accounts. So if I go ahead and scroll down just a little bit here, right here, I have SBA loan, long-term liabilities. It's showing that it's going to be on my balance sheet. That's what this little BAL means. You'll notice that there is a P&L right down here, and that means this account shows up on my profit and loss. But I have this balance sheet and it's notes payable, okay? And you can again see the balance here is 0, and it will stay at 0 until I classify something to that liability account, okay? All right, now let's look at a few other ways that you can add accounts to your chart of accounts, because this is actually not the only way. If you are entering a bill, so if I go up here to the plus create button and then select bill, I can actually add a new expense account right here in the category by selecting add new. Then we see the same screen here pops out and I can add a new expense account. So if I was adding a new expense here, let's say that I wanted to now have water under my utilities account, I could put water and that would be an expense. So I would go down here to expenses, and then under detail type, I would want to put utilities, okay, which is right down here at the bottom. And then the final thing here, you can see that I do have a utilities account, and under that utilities account, I have electricity and telephone. Well, I also want water to show up as a sub-account there. So I can select right here, make this a sub-account, and then assign utilities as the parent account, okay? Now, there is this option right here to lock accounts, all right? Basically, if I lock an account, it would make it unselectable on the overall menu. This is something that you might want to do if you are using sub-accounts. You might want to lock the parent accounts so that all classifications of transactions have to go through the sub accounts, okay? So if I were entering utilities bills, I wouldn't want anything to end up in the overall utilities bucket. I would want it all in water, electricity, or telephone, okay, for the sake of this example. But for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and leave this unlocked because I don't want to limit that just yet. So now you can see this shows up as a sub account. So I can go ahead and hit save here. And like I said, it does give you the option to lock the parent account. I'm not taking that option at this point, so I'm just going to say no. And you can see once I have added that, it automatically puts it in here. So if I were going through and entering a bill, I could create this expense account and then continue right on with my process here. All right. I'll go ahead and close this, and I'm going to show you another area where we can actually add expense or income accounts right in line, okay? So if I go up here and then go to bank transactions, or alternatively, again, if you're on your home screen and you click accounting, bank transactions will be the first thing that come up under that accounting menu. So here in the bank transactions tab, I can also go ahead and add new income or expense accounts as it makes sense. So right here under match or category, I have the option to say add new. And again, there is that left hand or that right hand menu that pops out where I can add a new account. Okay. So like I said, the process of adding an account on your chart of accounts is actually very straightforward. You're going to need some information. You're going to need to know what you want to name the account, and you're also going to need to know the detail type and subtype, okay? What I recommend is if you are having any questions about this process, go in and look at all the drop-down menus. Check out what your options are and then pick what makes the most sense, okay? You can make some changes down the road, but it is important to do your best to get it right from the get-go, because sometimes making edits, sweeping edits to accounts on your chart of accounts can also mess up historical data, okay? You can change things in current year, but sometimes you want to be careful with that in case something has already been reported. Now, as far as naming goes, you actually can't name an account the same thing twice in QuickBooks Online, okay? A couple of things might happen. If you're doing an import, you might see something happen where you see a -1 or a 1 in parentheses, something to that effect on your chart of accounts, okay? And if you see that, what that means is that an account was added, but there was already an account with that name. Okay. When it comes to managing your chart of accounts, the fact that you cannot name an account the exact same thing is actually a really important tool, because you do actually have the ability to merge accounts if you want to or need to. And you can do this quite simply by naming two accounts the same exact thing and then approving the merge function. Okay. I recommend doing this with extreme caution. Again, because that can impact historical reporting. So if you have any questions about that process, please do reach out to your bookkeeper or CPA before you give it a try. What I will say is one of the more common instances where I personally use that merge feature on behalf of myself and my clients is if I have a bank feed that has gotten broken for some reason, and when I go to reestablish it, it doesn't end up matching back up to the existing bank feed, and it instead creates another bank feed. Sometimes it's necessary to merge those. I mostly see that with smaller regional banks, but it does happen from time to time, okay? I will do a separate video on specifically how to merge accounts and the instances where that is a good idea, because trust me, it is not all instances, but it is a part of your chart of accounts management. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave those in the comments section below, and I will be sure to get to them. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Holly from Accrual Mistress Bookkeeping and Consulting, and I hope you have a wonderful day.